So you have your new band's name, your new artist name, or maybe you just started a new company and you're ready to start growing your brand. Well, before you do that, and to make sure that you hopefully will not receive a cease and desist letter from someone else who actually owns that name that you weren't even aware of, what we're going to do is go through the first couple of steps that you can do for yourself to make sure that you stay protected, you're aware of anyone else who might register or have a registration out close to your name, and that way you can stay protected. Hi guys, I'm Miss Crystal. I am an entertainment attorney, I'm the owner of Dukes Up Records, and most importantly, I'm an independent musician. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our weekly videos where we're discussing things like marketing, trademark, copyright, and just everything that you need to keep in mind throughout your music career. Alright you guys, so I'm gonna walk you through this just as if this was for one of my clients when you come in and we're going through the initial steps just to make sure that the name is available. There's gonna be 3 different sources that we look at, but the first is pretty easy. You're just gonna go over to Google, and then with whatever the name is that you've come up with for your rapper name, your band, whatever it is, you're gonna just type it into Google and you're gonna see what populates. For purposes of this demonstration, I'll just use my artist name, which is something that I had to do the same process for and also have registered with the trademark office, which will be something that we talk about here in a minute. So my artist name is spelled Miss Crystal. So we'll put it in just for an initial search. When I did this, goodness, over a decade ago at this point, there was another Miss Crystal that came up, and she was actually more in the dominatrix sphere, and so she had the MissCrystal.com website, and so it was just important to be aware of someone else who was utilizing the name. But more importantly, when we find different search results, we're going to look at what it is that it's in association to. And we'll also even look at search terms that are similar to, but maybe just misspellings of the name. So for example, a common misspelling of my name is Crystal with an A-L, or of course people will just say C-R-Y-S-T-A-L, but let's try Miss Crystal. And so you see some of my content is still coming up, and this is just because over time, the analytics and the Google keywords and things like that all learn from each other. But back in the day, when you would search Miss Crystal with the wrong spelling, there would be nothing that came up for me in particular. So I'd look at some of these and we would see the different Miss Crystal profiles. And quite a bit I would run into things like maybe makeup artists or just these people who were putting out content but weren't necessarily like me in that they were doing music. So as the first step, we're going to go through Google and we're going to try and look for any red flags. And don't just look at the first page, go through the first 5 to 10 pages and just see what initially comes up. This is going to give you at least the first step so that you understand if there's any huge red flags. If there is, for example, a rapper that's using a name exactly like the spelling that you're trying to use or that's pretty similar to, you have to make notes of all these things. So, like I said, when I did this initially, I go through the first 5-10 pages, see all the different results, and then from here, you are now done with step 1, which is reviewing the World Wide Web of the different marks that may be similar to yours. So now that we've actually gone through this step, just to do a quick search on the internet, just to see what pops up, and let's say the name looks like it's available. Well, the other conversation that we want to have is, as we're talking about building your brand and making sure that a name is available so that you don't put in all of this time and effort and then you end up needing to change it down the road a couple of years, that's no good. But as we're also talking about the brand, we have to talk about protecting you as an artist, as a band, as, well, a brand. And the way that we can do that is by registering an entity. When we register an entity, there's a bunch of different types, and we probably will even do a video just dedicated to the steps of going through an application to register your entity. But let's talk about it in generalities for a sec. We have partnerships, there are corporations, and there are limited liability companies. There's differences in how one's beneficial for taxes and this and that, but you don't really need to worry about that until you are really just killing it and you have millions of dollars coming in the front door and all that. That's not happening right now for the most of us. So what we want to do is usually set up a limited liability company, and so what it does is it creates a liability shield around what you're doing in the artistic sphere. And so if you get sued, well, now your LLC is going to be the company that gets sued rather than you personally, and that makes a big difference, especially if you lose the lawsuit. So As we're kind of going through these different steps, it's so that I can put you in the right mindset of thinking not just about yourself as a brand, as a business, but in the business realm, making sure that you are protecting yourself every step of the way. Step 3, we're going to look through the U.S.P.T.O, which is the United States Patent and Trademark Office, which is just uspto.gov. There we go. And so this is where everyone files their stuff for patents as well as trademarks. You'll see in the Find It Fast section here, there's a tab for trademarks. You pull that down, and then there's TES or TES. So you click on that, and this is how we're going to search for what is currently registered or pending with the U.S.P.T.O. So starting with the first basic word search, you'll see over here there's a couple of options, and we can look for live as well as dead trademarks. For this one, we're going to be looking at only live because that's all we care about, at least at this point. So let's do a trademark search for Miss Crystal. Now we're going to see a couple of trademarks that come up here because I have actually registered my trademark, and something that you'll end up having a conversation with your entertainment attorney when you're ready to take this step, because this is more about the very beginning. We're not ready to file a trademark right now, probably. But we do this just to make sure that the name is actually available. So when I did these initial searches for Miss Crystal, I didn't see anything come up, but what you have to remember is that you have to get a little creative here. The trademark search function is only going to bring up the literal words that you put into the search bar. It's not going to give you "did you mean" or any other suggested terms or phrases. And so that's why you have to be a little bit creative. So we know Miss Crystal. Let's put CRYSTAL and see if anything comes up for that. No, it took me back to my actual registration. And then also, let's get crazy. CHRISTAL. Any variation or Miss, we could do Ms., MZ. The reason this is important is because while you can file any trademark application that you want, it's pretty expensive. Most law offices are going to charge you somewhere around $1,000 to even file the first time around, and then they're going to charge you more for the work that they have to do on the back end, because to file a trademark, it can end up being almost a year of time. A lot of money, a lot of time. So this goes all the way back to the beginning. The intention is that you want to build a brand that's going to be successful, that's going to have longevity. But it gets a little bit tricky if you get all the way to the step where you're ready to file a federal trademark to protect your brand, but then someone else owns it. So that's why we do this search this far in advance, just to make sure the name is available. So what ends up happening is that if someone has your literal trademark, you're going to get denied. You're going to lose your money, you're going to lose your time, it's not going to be good. But if the examiner, so meaning the person who actually looks at your application, finds that there's actually trademarks that are similar because they sonically sound similar or visually they're written kind of similar, you might actually get a denial for that. So if there was a Ms. Crystal with some funky spelling and this person happened to be doing the same thing that I'm trying to register, aka registering for music releases, for entertainment services, for clothing, because I have merch that I sell, well, I could have gotten a rejection for all those reasons. So while this sounds a little complicated, the reason we're doing these first 3 steps is just to make sure the name is available. So let's go back here. Maybe we'll do one more with a Ms. just to see what comes up. All right, and nothing came up with that pretty funky spelling. Now you have to remember that this isn't what's, at least for my law office, we call a knockout search. So the knockout search is very superficial. We did this in the course of a couple of minutes. There are third-party companies that you can hire and pay $700 to have them run a very lengthy search. And so if you're a Pepsi or if you're one of these really big brands and you know you're going to invest millions of dollars into your marketing, it's going to be really prudent that you do a full in-depth search. But for most of us musicians who don't have that kind of money, what we're going to do is we're going to sit down, do these searches, and usually just have a more superficial understanding of what's out there and then move forward based on our results. In story time, let's go back to the Miss Crystal, and I'm going to give you an example of what happened when I was trying to register my mark. So with Miss Crystal, I'm a musician. Like I said, I do entertainment services. I'm releasing clothing items for my music, shirts and things like that. So let's take a look at one of these. When I registered my mark, this is how it was filed. It just says my name and it says, what is this registration for? It's going to be for services or goods, and so you specify this in your application. Well, the examiner looked at my application and I actually got denied. And the way that the process works is that you basically get 3 strikes and you're out. And if you get 3 denials, it's done. So you lose your money, you lose your time, it's no good. So in the initial denial that I received, the trademark examiner had asserted that she had found another registration. She said, they're way too similar, so we're gonna deny you. We don't want you infringing on this other person's registration. And that other registration was Crystal Records. And in fact, let's take a quick look right here. All right, here we go. So this is the registration, and it's within the same. Mine was within 009, which is for compact disc, aka music. So 009 music, and then Miss Crystal 009 music. Now, with Crystal Records, the examiner had asserted, well, because there's a word, aka crystal, that's very similar sonically, visually, this is too close, and it's going to cause consumer confusion. Well, my brand is so unbelievably different from a record label that there's no way that any potential fan of mine versus the record label could ever get confused with how we look, how we sell things. And most importantly, this required a little education for the examiner, because just understanding that on platforms like Spotify, like iTunes, you don't search for record labels, you search for artists. And so just the ability to actually have some kind of consumer confusion just simply wasn't going to happen. So this goes back to having an entertainment attorney to help you through the back end of your application, because now you have to make legal arguments. And so because I am my own entertainment attorney, I was able to handle this. But even with all my most amazing arguments and explanations and this and that, I got denied a second time. And I ended up doing some creative lawyering, so I was able to overcome the initial denials, but it took a lot from the practical standpoint of educating the examiner to actually making the legal arguments based on legal research that I did. So with all that being said, it can be quite a headache. And so that's why we're taking the time to actually go through and to help you understand how to do this so you can avoid this headache yourself. If you find someone who has your exact name, or maybe it's just very, very similar because it's sonically similar or it's visually similar, and they're doing the same type of thing you're trying to do for your own career, well, you're probably gonna have a problem. And like I said at the beginning of this video, we want to avoid you getting a cease and desist letter from the actual owner of that name down the road. So what happens when you find a potential problem? Well, at that point, it might be worth you actually contacting an entertainment attorney to have them give you an analysis and just to give you an opinion letter for an hour, whatever it's going to end up being, to just talk to you about the potential risks of moving forward and using that particular name. I actually had this just last week. I'm talking to someone who's looking at starting her new personal brand, and she's going to be selling all these different goods and basically starting from absolute scratch. So we go through these different websites and do the research to see what's out there, and we actually found a potential risk to the name that she wanted to use. And so the conversation ends up coming back to, well, because you understand that this is going to be a risk, if you decide to move forward with it, you're well within your rights, and you might even skate under the radar for quite a while. Usually the issue happens because you achieve some kind of success, you are getting more notoriety and goodwill with your consumers and things like that. And so now people become aware of you. So that's why I say, as far as you might get that cease and desist down the road, well, it takes time. It takes time for you to rank up in your Google Analytics and things like that. So like I said, you might be able to skate under the radar for a while, but we're in this for the long haul. We're in this for the marathon, and to be able to really build a legacy brand. So that's why you just need to make sure that if you do find some red flags, that you contact entertainment attorney and have that conversation, because sometimes there are still workarounds, and there's things that we can do to do something like a coexistence agreement with the person who owns the other trademark, and there are things that can be done. So don't feel like, all hope is lost if you do find something that is a potential red flag. But conversely, if you find something that is a registered existing brand that is right on point with what you're trying to do, the exact same name, and if it's really too close and you don't even bother with it, have a conversation about changing the name and try to come up with something even more unique and fanciful that maybe someone else wouldn't have possibly ever thought of, and that also could be a really positive business move for your brand in the long run. Taking these 3 steps together, I know there's probably a lot of information, it might be a little bit overwhelming, so feel free to rewatch this video, maybe even create a playlist. I've done this for myself when I was kind of self-teaching before I went to law school, before I had anyone to even help me. I just was really good at researching, and so when I would find videos that were instructional and kind of helped me along, I would actually add them to playlists and re-listen to them over and over and over until I just knew the information at heart. So if that helped you, definitely do that. And I would just say, as you are building your brand even further, maybe you're beyond the band name. Well, as you expand, you're probably going to want to start, a merch line. You're probably going to want to start these additional things. And so every time you're starting something new, always be in that business mindset and go through these steps. See what's available out there and see if anything is going to end up causing issues. And sometimes even some of the smaller steps, and we didn't even talk about it because this is less important from the legal standpoint. Also look on social media. You just want to see if this particular name is available, if there's anyone that's kind of in your market doing the same thing that you're doing that's going to be an issue or it's going to be too similar. And this is going to be something else as far as when you actually get the registration, you do your domain, if you use GoDaddy, you get your social media links. And so basically before we start, it's a lot to think about. It's usually not fun because this is the administrative steps that everyone has to take. But nonetheless, you get it done now because you are a business person. You're in this because you want this to be successful. It will be successful. And so you're going to be tactical and thoughtful before you take steps and you actually commit to things like what the name in the long term is going to be. If you want to learn more about trademarks, be sure to sign up to be on our email list and you will get a free guide on branding and trademarks to help you with your business and music career. All right, you guys, I'm gonna get out of here, but I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. This was basically a client consult that my law office does for our clients who are looking to build their brands, to trademark their names for state registrations, for federal registrations. And so this is a step that you guys can absolutely do for yourselves. Save yourself a little money. And then of course, if you do need to get in touch with an entertainment attorney, you can after you've done kind of these initial knockout searches yourselves. So with that all being said, make sure you subscribe and don't forget to hit that bell notification so you don't miss another video, and I'll see you on the next one. I'm Miss Crystal. Bye guys.